Chris Mannix, Sports Illustrated senior NBA and boxing writer. He joins us on the program from Mexico. What are you doing in Mexico?
Part of the Zone broadcast team on Saturday, Dan, for the fight they've got down there. That I'm back to Boston for the start of the playoffs.
And what's the fight? What's the big fight?
The fight this weekend is Jaime Munguia and Dennis Hogan, but the big fight coming up is Canelo Alvarez back in the ring against Danny Jacobs. That's on May 4th on DAZN. A lot of boxing in the next couple of months.
Oh, okay. Lomachenko this weekend as well, right?
Yeah, he's fighting tonight, and it's not a great fight because the guy he's facing, Anthony Corolla, is just the kind of guy he has to fight as a mandatory to defend his title. But anytime Lomachenko fights, the guy is number one pound for pound in the world, one of the great fighters of all time. He's running into the problem that a lot of boxers have in what is always a fractured sport, and that is opponents. There are guys out there he could fight, but the politics of boxing make it difficult to make those fights.
Ever been ringside and got blood on you?
Oh, all the time. In my capacity now, working with DAZN, I'm sitting right there in that literal ringside position, and I could text you pictures of my notebooks with blood spots on them from the last couple of shows, but it happens pretty frequently.
What do you do when you get blood on yourself?
I don't know. It's kind of like a badge of honor, no? You're kind of in the trenches.
That's true.
I do take pictures of a notebook paper, and I don't know. It's almost like I was in the fight, but I really wasn't in the fight. So it kind of adds to the atmosphere, I think, of the event.
You ever been knocked over in an NBA game, like courtside? I don't know where you sit during an NBA game.
Back in the day, before teams kind of realized that selling the seats that the media sat in was a better way of doing it, I've had guys kind of jump into the press section in those first couple of rows. Remember, even at Madison Square Garden used to be great. They put the press right there along the visitors' bench, but then all of a sudden they realized that they could make tens of thousands of dollars selling those seats, and they kicked the media upstairs into the halo section there of the Garden. And that's kind of the case across the league. There are still some teams, especially in the smaller markets, that put the media at or near courtside, but more and more you're seeing the media move further and further off the floor.
I'll get into the Lakers here in a moment. Give me the two teams that you think can beat the Golden State Warriors this year.
I don't think anybody can, honestly.
Okay.
And I was thinking about this as I was kind of working on some final stuff. Last year, Dan, what were we talking about? We were talking about Stephen Curry's injury and how that might affect the team in the playoffs. And we were talking about kind of that regular season malaise that they went through as potentially being a precursor for something bad happening to that team in the playoffs. But then they go out and, they struggled a little bit with Houston, a lot really, and went to 7 games. But then they rolled through Cleveland in the NBA Finals. This year, it kind of feels like deja vu. We're talking about Kevin Durant's free agency and DeMarcus Cousins, how he's going to fit. These are minor things on the back of a juggernaut. So I think they could get a scare or be forced to go deep into at least one series. But it's impossible to think that anybody's going to take them in 4 out of 7. I think they'll get a much tougher challenge in the finals this year, regardless of who comes out of the East, than they did last year against Cleveland.
Yeah, but they could have easily lost last year, Chris. If Houston acts like Houston in the 7th game and Chris Paul acts like Chris Paul and doesn't get hurt, they're winning, and they're going to the NBA Finals and probably winning the championship here. So I don't think you can look at it and go, hey, they had a little bit of a scare. They should have lost.
They could have lost, I think. The Chris Paul injury sealed it for Houston, but you can't look at the Rockets and say, well, if only they hadn't missed 37 threes in that Game 7, they would have won. Well, that's part of the game. They missed a shot, and you can go what if with a lot of things. So, I think the Rockets will still be tough. I don't think they're quite as strong as they were last year with Trevor Ariza in that mix, but I'm not buying anybody beating Golden State 4 out of 7. If it's the Golden State versus the field debate, I'm putting all my money on Golden State.
Chris Mannix, Sports Illustrated, senior NBA and boxing writer. Also, he has a new show on Sports Illustrated, In the Paint, just launched and can be seen every Tuesday. His first guest is the commissioner, Adam Silver. All right, the Lakers mess here. What the hell happened the other day, and what happens moving forward with this franchise?
Well, it's still, the more people you talk to in and around the Lakers organization, the more you get the sense that what it was is what it is. And what I mean by that is Magic Johnson wasn't holding anything back when he articulated why he was walking away from that team. And if you're familiar with the history of Magic Johnson, I know you are, you covered him extensively as a player in the 90s. In 1994, he quit coaching because he kind of didn't feel like doing it anymore, didn't like the challenge of it. 1998, that terrible TV show he did. He quit that. In the aftermath, all you heard about was how he wasn't committed to it, and the show was a disaster from start to finish. It's a lot of work to be an NBA executive, a top-level NBA executive. It's not just kind of sitting back, watching games, making picks, and waiting for free agents to want to flock to you. You've got to hop on planes and go scout the next Giannis in Greece. You've got to go to low-level college games to find the next Kyle Kuzma, or the next great second-round pick that fleshes out your roster. I don't think, and this is based on a few conversations I've had, I just don't think Magic had the heart for it and had the desire to do it on a daily basis. And, we can have a different conversation about the lunacy of going out there and quitting without telling your boss or anybody in the organization, the insanity of sitting in a 3-hour meeting the day before and not articulating at all that you might not be part of this team going forward. That's a separate conversation. But why he quit, I just think he didn't want to do it anymore. He decided it's more fun just being Magic Johnson.
There's something else to this story, Chris. There has to be. You don't have a 3-hour meeting and then all of a sudden go down the elevator and go, I think I'm going to quit. That it just doesn't happen. There has to be something else going on.
I don't know. I mean, you've heard the speculation. I haven't been able to figure out exactly what is true and what's not true with this report about some kind of ESPN story about something going on behind the scenes out there. Maybe there's something to it. But even if there was, Dan, that might explain the abruptness of the decision to quit. Because, nobody was clamoring for Magic Johnson's job. I mean, he hadn't been great at that job, but he wasn't, he didn't leave the Lakers in disrepair here. But ultimately, whether it was the way he quit or when he quit, I think he did quit because he didn't want to do it anymore. And that's based a lot on his history and what we know about Magic Johnson.
All right, moving forward, is Luke Walton going to keep his job?
I think it all depends on who the next, head of basketball operations is there. Right now, Rob Pelinka is taking on a bigger role. But I've been told there's nothing decided yet as far as who is going to be running the Lakers long term. I mean, everybody around the league that has an opinion on this says the Lakers need to go outside the organization to find somebody not within the Laker family. I mean, this is a team, Dan, with infinite resources. I mean, they can afford to pay like $20 million for an executive if they want to do that. If it means giving up a first-round pick for an executive, they can do that. I mean, they are well-equipped to go after the top guy. And look, I would make every phone call you have to make. I would try to get Sam Presti out of Oklahoma City. Sam Presti's built something there. He wouldn't be leaving Oklahoma City in a bad place because Paul George and Russell Westbrook are tied to long-term contracts. I would try Bob Myers. He's got the UCLA connection. This might be a good time for Bob Myers to move on, with Kevin Durant potentially leaving and maybe having to overhaul that roster a little bit. I would even call R.C. Buford in San Antonio. Everybody out there kind of assumes that R.C. Buford is this San Antonio Spurs lifer. Has anybody even asked him to try to, if he wanted to run his own operation and try something new somewhere else with all the resources of the Lakers? I would go big game hunting if I was Jeannie Buss and not let money or draft consideration stop me from getting my guy.
Best first-round matchup in the playoffs is?
The most meaningful, I think, to spin it a different way, because I don't know how many great first-round matchups there are. Most meaningful, Portland, Oklahoma City. Portland's a team everybody wanted to play because of the Nurkic injury and how it weakens them. If Oklahoma City can't get out of the first round against a Portland team that is down a significant player, they've got some real long-term problems. I mean, last year you kind of gave them a mulligan because the Carmelo stuff, Paul George's first year. This year, though, for most of the season, they look like a contender. The last month or two of the year, the shooting percentage fell off a cliff. They didn't look like the same team. This is a team with a top 10-ish level defense, 2 superstars. You've got to get out of the first round. So that's the one I think I'll be watching closely because it may have the most long-term impact.
MVP this year will be?
I'm voting for Giannis. It's not really that close in my mind. I mean, James Harden, awesome. Paul George, great. Go down the list. But Giannis from start to finish, Dan. I don't know how. Giannis also got my vote for Defensive Player of the Year. So that's a factor in it as well. Giannis is not just a ridiculous offensive player with what he did this year, but I think he's the best defensive player in the league. And for those reasons, he's getting my vote.
Yeah, this is what I said to Adrian Wojnarowski. I said, if the Greek Freak had won the MVP last year, who would be your MVP this year? Would he go back-to-back?
Probably. One thing that weighs on me as I make this decision is, I know that Chris Paul missed a bunch of games this year, but he played 58 games, and he was around for most of the season. The difference between Giannis and the second best player on Milwaukee is the gap is bigger than other MVP candidates and their second best player. I'm talking about Harden, Paul George, and Westbrook, Kawhi Leonard, and Kyle Lowry. Go down the list. There's just Kevin Durant and Steph Curry. Chris Middleton's a good player.
He was an all-star.
He was
an all-star.
But would that Bucks team make the playoffs without Giannis?
Would the Rockets make the playoffs without Harden?
With Chris Paul, yes. I think they'd make the playoffs.
Yeah, but you had
in the Eastern
Capella,
Conference,
who was injured.
I don't think without Giannis, Bucks do it.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think Giannis is going to win it, but I disagree. If Giannis had won it last year, then people would have given it to James Harden this year. You guys are predictable. You voters are predictable. You are.
Yeah, but hold on. But sometimes, predictability is the right thing to do. I mean, and defense has to play a role in this, right, Dan? I mean, the guy is a great defensive player who, the team, I think, finished number 1 in defensive rating, and Giannis plays like 35, 40 minutes every single night, and he can defend every position. How many guys in this league? I mean, Rudy Gobert is a stopper in the middle in Utah. But how many guys in this league can defend 5s and 1s in the way that Giannis can do it? I don't know of anybody.
Thank you, Chris. Always great to talk to you.
You got it, Dan.
That's Chris Mannix, Sports Illustrated NBA boxing writer. I think he's offended that I ended the conversation there instead of going, hey, well put there.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune into Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV. Stream for free on BR Live or download the Dan Patrick Show app.